How we doing, everybody? Good. Thank you. How are you, Mike?
Good, yeah.
Good.
Third day of the event.
Third day of an event. Always a doozy. So maybe the best place to start is so we're talking about Pith and Douro Labs and oracles and moving into like DeFi 2.0 Renaissance and where oracles play a role there. There was a thing that went viral the other day on Twitter, which was a screenshot of DeFi Llama, and it showed that Pith had overtaken the other oracles. And I just like maybe from a founder to founder question here, like when you see Pith being on top, is that more of have you guys done that because of better execution? Do you have just better technology than the other oracles? Do you have a better BD team? Like what is that journey to getting there?
Yeah, I think that the Pith team and Douro Labs' team have always been great at building product and at doing BD. And I think that we've always been the least good at marketing. Um, what happened with DeFi Llama is they started to include a category that they had never included before, and it's the category where Pith really excels. So the two big use cases for oracles on chain are either lending protocols or trading protocols. Lending protocols obviously was like DeFi 1.0, all about trust, and not necessarily important to have speed. DeFi 2.0 is all around high speed, perpetual markets that trade on chain, and that has been the core application type that Pith has empowered. Started doing this on Solana, went from Solana to 80 different blockchains, and has been really the market leader in this for a really long time. It hadn't yet been fully acknowledged that those were the two use cases. I think the DeFi Llama team had historically said, yeah, we just use this one metric, it's the TVL. So it was really nice to see that this has been well accepted, that one of the core primitives for DeFi, which is trading, is the largest user of oracles. And so I think that, from my perspective, it was just the culmination of us doing a whole lot of work to make sure that the product's great, that we're on the right chains, that the BD team is working to do the integration, that it's got the right symbols and the publishers, and people can kind of trust it.
Yeah. What is more important from your perspective? If you had to pick one metric, what's more important, the TVL or the TVS, total value secured, or the number of blockchains that you're actually working on? And the reason I ask this is you can sort by other things on DeFi Llama for oracles that make it so that Pith is not number one, right? There's another
Oh, yeah.
oracle that secures all of MakerDAO, and that's a boatload of TVS, but it's one thing. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, so Pith is the largest on total volume secured, on number of blockchains, but it's not the largest by total value locked, because obviously there's a lot of value that's locked in Maker, Aave, and Compound, and those have different oracles. The way that we've always approached this from a BD perspective is to try and, instead of going after the entire crypto market, try and really win ecosystems independently. And we think about this the way that kind of Facebook did it. There was MySpace beforehand, and MySpace was the leader for people on the internet that wanted a social network. And Facebook was the leader for people in Harvard that wanted a social network, and then Harvard and Yale, and then all the Ivies, and then the US universities, and then the Canadian ones. Pith was first the Oracle on Solana, and it was dominant there. And then we started to expand to other blockchains, and we were really focused on making sure that we had such high market share on all the different blockchains we deployed on. And now Pith is available on 80 different blockchains. On about 40 of them, I think it's over 50%. On about 25 of them, it's over 90% by both TVL and by total value traded.
So we had Stani and Rune in the office the other day, and we were talking about we recorded a podcast. And we were talking about like DeFi 1.0 was very about like security and safety and kind of the backbone of DeFi. And then we were saying there's this thing coming, DeFi 2.0. It's like this DeFi renaissance that Rune and Stani have been talking about, and that's more about like speed and like transactions and thousands of transactions a day instead of one big transaction a day. How does the need for oracles change in DeFi 2.0? And like yeah, I guess just like where do oracles fit in that world, and how is it different than DeFi 1.0?
In DeFi 1.0, speed is not important, right? As you mentioned. And
What is the important thing in DeFi?
trust.
Trust, okay.
So oracles really provide trust. That's the number one thing. So you think about it as you spend all of this proof of work or proof of stake to be able to verify that the blockchain you don't have a single trusted party. You trust that the whole system works, right? And so there could be some stake, could be slashable, but there's all these trust mechanics that are built in. If you pull in some data from an external source, you've broken that trust. So the
Mm,
Oracle needs to be able to preserve trust when porting anything in. It's something that's exogenous to the state of the chain. So the most important thing is trust, but then doing so with speed enables all new types of applications. The hypothesis we had when we were developing the network was it had only optimized for trust in the past. So the initial oracles that were used would use redundancy to fetch prices from the internet,
mm,
and then kind of a wisdom of of the crowd to like aggregate them together. Then they would publish them on these really infrequent basis, either 50 basis points or 24 hours. It would get pushed on chain. And those don't enable trading applications, but it's fine for marking collateral. And that was kind of DeFi 1.0 was
yeah,
mostly around marking collateral. Solana made it possible that you had 400 millisecond block times. You could actually start to do perpetuals on chain. And that's where we saw all the innovation, right? It was all done on Solana. And then eventually DeFi 2.0 went to other blockchains. And so layer twos with 1 to 2 second block times were possible to offer those types of applications as well. The way that Pyth is able to innovate here is the data comes directly from publishers. As you're aware, we've got trading firms, exchanges who are publishing their data directly to the PythNet blockchain. It cuts out all the middlemen. It preserves the integrity of the data so that it's not being scraped by somebody else and there's no kind of reporter risk. So it's this first party element to it. And it's being published at Solana block times and then made available to all these other blockchains.
interesting.
Um, yeah, so I think that's really empowered it. The kind of the meta point though is if you think about like the number of users over time, it's always unlocked based on the quality of the infrastructure. So the infrastructure really enables the adoption. So back on DeFi 1.0, people were willing to pay high prices in terms of like the performance or in the cost for the decentralization. And there's a very small number of people that care about that, like
Right.
25 million or so, monthly actives to be generous. DeFi 2.0, where we are today, both on the Solana and then going across all the other chains, we're maybe around 100 million kind of active wallets, and that's good. I mean, it's still late 90s in terms of like internet users, so there's still a lot more performance that needs to happen. And we don't think that being 400 milliseconds is the end state for us either. We want PythNet to be faster. We want costs to continuously go down. I
Mm,
think that there's still too much cost and latency within the system to really compete with CeFi. But one thing that has been exciting is that year over year, we've seen the on chain perpetual market volumes grow massively.
mm,
Last year, it was around 1% of Binance perps, and now it's around 8%.
interesting. So what is like when you think about what? Okay, so you guys are the fast oracle.
Yeah,
Uh,
we're the fast oracle.
Fast Oracle. What does that actually unlock from a user perspective and a product perspective? Is it bringing just more CeFi trading and like sex trading into Dex trading and like perps trading on chain?
Yeah, I mean,
Is it all about it's all about trading, right?
yeah. So I guess DeFi is really unlocking the stuff that you want to do from a finance perspective on chain. And so the stuff that people generally do with finance is they either trade for themselves or they, put money into an asset management strategy. It could be an
Right.
index or an ETF. Um, the thing that we're seeing the most adoption for today is trading on chain. And this is really what Fifth empowers, like all the perpetual markets from Sin Futures, who in June did several $billion of on-chain volume. That's enabled because they could take the Pyth price, which is very fast, 400 milliseconds fast, not faster than say the Binance price, but it's very
Right,
fast. And
right.
so you can get a percentage of the volume. As that continuously goes down, you get more and more trading abilities. But what I actually think, like when you zoom out on what excites me about DeFi, it's that we need to be at kind of the table stakes parity level on all of these features
Mm,
versus CeFi. People are unwilling to pay almost anything for the decentralization tax, right? It needs to be that you're at the same speeds and costs as TradFi or CeFi, and that this is an additional feature that people can have.
right.
And once we're there, I think we'll see the masses actually move over, and then you'll start to really appreciate what's available, like low switching costs. I think that's a huge feature for DeFi. How many times have people had an experience with their bank brokerage in the last 3 years where you just want to pull your hair out and you say, crypto should fix this? it's super annoying, but it doesn't happen that frequently. So you end up saying, "Oh, fine, I'll just deal with it." I don't go to the the branch off
Right, right,
close
right.
my account. But I think once we're able to get to these levels where people are like, actually, everything works just as good as it does on TradFi or on CFI, and it has this feature, then we'll start to see some really cool things. And being able to compete on features the way that like the internet really first was migrating publications on to the internet, and then it was we're going to compete on features where like Snapchat is going to have a certain feature, TikTok has another,
Sure.
and I think that's what we get with DeFi.
Yeah. So Blockworks Research is publishing this report. It should go live this week. I think it goes live tomorrow. And one of the things that we're calling out is that TVS is not actually the way to properly track the success of an oracle. And I think the pitch that one of our analysts makes is that there's a new metric called total. I think it's total transaction value (TTV) instead of TVS.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned earlier in the chat that TVS is maybe a flawed metric. I'm curious what you think of like this metric, total transaction value, or like what is the right way to track the success of these?
I think total transaction volume makes a whole lot more sense, specifically for oracles, because when you think about where the economics of fees will eventually um, pass through to protocols, it's usually on the transaction.
Mm,
Total value locked, total value secured looks much more like an AUM. And so while the market's pretty immature today and there's not a whole lot of revenue that's being captured by either the protocols or the Oracle networks, um, the likelihood that the Oracle is going to empower all this transaction volume and can charge a reasonable fee while the market continues to scale makes a whole lot of sense to me. It's like thinking about where the volumes come from in TradFi, like the CME makes tremendous amount of volume, but like a passive index fund, which is more the total value locked or total value secured, they don't have high fees because people are kind of unwilling to pay a huge amount for a slow oracle that's just securing something where the collateral is not really being valued. So I think that's the big unlock. It's we need these to have like sustainable economic models. And so the way that Pith works is everything's published to PithNet and then it gets pulled onto 80 different blockchains when it's used. Each one of those pulls has a small fee that's embedded into it
right.
and it gets collected by the network and eventually can get passed back to the contributors of the network.
Mm.
And
And the application pays that fee.
either the application or the user
The-
of the application. Um, and that model is very clean, right? You don't have to use too much of an imagination to show that like it's something that would work. There's about 4.5 million of those transactions per day that go to the different blockchains. So um, I think it's the right model for oracles.
Yeah. Um, Maybe we could pivot to slashing.
Yeah,
So slashing is this for people who've paid attention in the Oracle space for years, slashing is this thing that has been hypothesized for years, and Chainlink kind of played around with a little mini example of it, and people were kind of hypothesizing that maybe EigenLayer should do something with oracles or become an oracle or something like that. And I think the idea here is that oracles should have slashable stake, and we caught up in Singapore for a little bit, and you were telling me you guys have kind of figured this out.
yeah.
And I'd love to just, I don't even really know the right question to ask here, but I'd love to just like hear about this journey and tell us about like Pith and slashing.
Yeah, Oracle Integrity Staking is called. Has gone live in Pith Price Fees V3. So Pith Price Fees V1 was just on Solana. V2 went to PithNet, connected to 80 blockchains. V3 is now Price Fees with security. And I think you worded it really well. Like it's something that's been hypothesized as this is what the market needs at some point, but having the guts to put out slashable stake on every symbol. There's over 600 symbols that Pith prices, everything from the price of Amazon, Bitcoin, all the way to a bunch of like LSTs that are on just a few like on-chain dexes. Everything is covered. And the reason why the team felt confident to be able to pull this off is that there is a number of non-economic measures in place to protect the network already. And so, we have a minimum number of publishers in each symbol. There's confidence intervals, which give you a range of appropriate responses. And all of the publishers are doxed within the network. They're doxed at like kind of a meta level. You see who they are. It's all big trading firms and exchanges. And so that gives you a certain amount of trust. But having economic security behind this, I think, is a huge unlock.
Mm.
Even if it doesn't get triggered all that much, I think there'll be a before and after moment for all of DeFi, similar to the way that there was a before and after moment for perps with BitMEX. Before BitMEX had an insurance fund, people would get this auto deleveraging, and it was a pretty bad experience. You
Right.
could lose your profit, you get this social clawback,
Yeah.
and then they instituted this insurance pool, which actually solved that problem, and eventually became gigantic. It became like this public good. My hope would be that Oracle integrity staking becomes this giant public good where people can who've never used DeFi before can say, well, there's all these problems. There's like, there's this Oracle risk problem that we now no longer need to worry about because there's all these mechanics that are in place, but there's also this huge slashable amount.
What is for someone who's not as deep into the weeds? What is the risk that non-slashable oracles have?
So if you're
Non-slashable state. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just give you the mechanics first of it.
Yeah.
So the publishers in the network are able to stake to the quality of their data, and delegators are also able to stake to a publisher. And then there's incentives for both of those participants to provide accurate data. Up to 10% rewards for the publishers and 8% for a delegator. There's a 20% fee that goes to the publishers from the delegators. And if there's a mispricing, and there's a rule book that describes what a mispricing is against the most liquid exchange for 1 minute, 250 basis points away, then the publishers are slashed. And there's a rule book as well that determines how much is slashed. And this is all kind of customizable by the DAO and can be determined to change over time. So let's say it's 5% that gets slashed for specific slashing events across the entire stake that publisher has. That means that that's available to be used potentially as compensation for someone who's using the Oracle and has a bad price. At the end of the day, when something is secured by an Oracle, it means that there's some value at risk that is pegged to that price. So in the case of lending protocols, your collateral is pegged to that price. If the Pith price for Bitcoin went down to like, $20, you'd get liquidated on your collateral.
Yeah.
And likewise with trading, if something's trading like Sin Futures, if the execution price is based on what Pith is showing and it showed $20, well, then there would be all these bad trades and like the LP pool would get wiped out. And they would need some recourse. So this gives them the ability to at least have some recourse. Similar to, remember the Mango attacks? Like,
Mango named their foundation Blockworks Foundation. So we got very familiar with Mango. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was like a great example. I mean, there's a bunch of problems with that weren't necessarily just the Oracle component of it, but the Oracle component
Right.
a lot. Like there's too much collateral that was being, or too much of a TVL that was being applied based on a very illiquid token. But I think that's the paradigm shift, right? It's that you can use unsecured oracles, and then you have this risk that you have to accept, or you can use secured oracles, and you never have to worry about it.
Yeah. I'm guessing you can't talk about this, but I'll ask it anyways. More staking means more Pith gets locked up, means historically Pith price goes up.
I can't talk about that. I can tell you that so it just went live last week.
Yeah.
And today there's about 135 million Pith tokens that are locked in the staking program. We would anticipate that continues to grow as publishers become more comfortable with what are the rules for engagement with regards to slashing. And I think that, this just creates such a better product because if the publisher no longer has to worry about just the reputational risk, but now they actually have economics at risk, even if there's no slashing event, the prices should just become better over time because of these incentives.
Nice. We have 1 minute left, so I'll ask one last question, which is we had dinner Monday night, and then Tuesday night, I know you were having dinner with all these TradFi folks. Give us a 30-second view into how a lot of these financial institutions are viewing like the Oracle business and what's happening there.
I think they understand. They've been around for a long time with the network. We've got 120 publishers. And again, they're all different walks of life. There's DeFi trading firms. There's the large trading firms that are multi-asset, like Jane Street, Susquehanna, DRW. And I think from the very beginning, they trusted Pith to at least give him a flashlight into how to understand DeFi. And I think now that they've understood that this really does become the backbone of what the future of DeFi enables. And it's probably their biggest vanguard into discovering new chains and discovering new applications. So we've been really lucky to have such loyalty with these publishers and build such great relationships with them.
Nice. That's all the time we got. Mike, congrats on everything. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
Yeah.